Hello, everyone, and welcome to On Point on Canine Chronicle TV. Today's topic is the best breed in the world, the pointer, the classic sporting breed. And I have today with me, I'm so happy to have with me, two dear, dear friends. We all came into it around the same time, and scarily enough, we have about 140 years together in pointers. Math, it's true. So joining me today is none other than the country squire of Watertown, New York, Mr. Tom Bradley. Welcome.
Hi, Wayne. Thank you.
And from Washington, Missouri, I believe. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yeah. The inimitable, poised and present, Paula Nykiel.
And we are lucky to have her here with us.
You
So happy to be here.
Me too.
All right. First, I want to start with a little background on how we all got in here. Tom, how did you get your first pointer? You were involved in dogs before this. When did your first pointer come into your life, and how did that happen?
I'm not sure you're going to want to hear all this story, but what truthfully happened is I started out in German Shorthair Pointers in the 50s. And then as time progressed, I always thought I wanted an English. And so I was lucky enough to get a really good dog. And I was even luckier to find Karen Prickett, who lived in outside of Detroit. She was a major Springer breeder and English Cocker breeder and handler. And so we became fast friends, Dr. Prickett and Karen and myself. And we showed a couple of English Cockers, and we showed a Springer or two. And she called me up one day and she said, "When are you coming out here? I've got a pointer I want you to look at." And I said, "Okay." So this is the honest truth. I went out, she brought this dog out, lemon and white dog, very dark orange, but a lemon nonetheless. And she said, "What do you think of him?" And I said, "Nice dog." "Who owns him?" And she said, "A couple in Lexington." And I said, "How much did they pay for him?" And she said, $300. And I said, "Well, they got their money's worth. He's a nice dog." And he finished rather quickly. And then following February, we were standing in the middle of Madison Square Garden, and he went best of breed pointers. And came out, we said, "Oh my, he just won best of breed." Well, his name was Champion Humbleacre Sandstorm. He was one of the sweetest dogs I've ever owned. And so that was my beginning in pointers. Oh, when he came out, I said, "What's they going to do with this dog?" And she said, "Well, we're going to show him, but they need a co-owner." And I said, "Well, that be me." So that's how I got my first pointer. And he won the breed the next year, and in 1976 he won the national specialty under Jack Mementer, who was quite a pointer expert at the time. Was not a great dog, I will tell you, but he was a wonderful dog.
He had so many good things about him. I mean, he was sound. He was the right make and shape. His head wasn't his fortune, but he was better than you might think.
Well, I think.
I'm sorry.
I think the thing that one of the reasons he did so well is he loved dog shows.
Yes.
Now, as compared to the other dogs who were being shown at the time, and they hadn't in the 60s and 70s, they weren't being schooled as much. Maybe you want to say they weren't as experienced enough. And but he'd stand in the middle of the ring and wag his tail and had a great time. And as a judge, it was pretty attractive.
And the irony of ironies, this just doesn't happen, folks. Paula got into pointers through a similar avenue in a different part of the world. Paula, how'd that start for you?
Well, I was really rather late to the game, as my parents didn't like dogs and I was never allowed to have a dog. So no dogs until I met my husband, Frank, and he obviously was a dog lover. And we were living in Boulder, Colorado, and I saw a neighbor had a Springer, and of course I thought they were beautiful. So that was actually my first. We went out to find a Springer puppy. That was my first AKC dog. So I decided, being a horse person and doing horse shows, I wanted to show my dog. So I did. So at the first show, I was there, and she wasn't quite what I was looking for, and I just decided to go a different direction. And at that show, we were in Kentucky, I believe, and I saw St. Aldwin's Radiance. And for me, that was it. And I think it's because I loved Arabian horses, and there's a lot to like about both those. The dish face, the little ears, the big eyes. So
Beautiful.
at that same show, I met Jeannie Ellis of Humble Acre Kennels. So a few weeks later, we visited her, and she had a puppy returned, a young bitch returned from a divorce case, and that was Amy. And she was Humble Acre Dark Side of the Moon, and we bought her on the spot, and that was my first pointer.
And she happened to be a Best in Show winner. Now, that doesn't happen.
Well, that didn't happen immediately.
and then there was Headhunter as well, another one of your dogs. And Sandstorm, Tom's first pointer. And was it Amy or Headhunter?
Amy and Sandstorm.
Yeah. So you had the Tom's dog as your first pointer, and Tom's first pointer was, of course, a littermate to yours. It's just magic. Now,
and then Headhunter was the repeat breeding of the two.
Oh, he was. I didn't know that.
Yes. Jeannie felt I did so well with Amy. She gave me first pick of that litter, and I chose Headhunter.
Wow.
Good choice.
That's great.
Yeah. I got lucky. I was very lucky in the beginning in my pointers. I think
we all were.
Well, you're pretty good at showing them, I can tell you that. Good eye for them.
It
I
was
want to
great
read
fun.
you the 1979 top 10 sporting dogs. This is for pointers, right? We had in that list Dark Side of the Moon. That would be Amy.
Uh-huh.
We had Humble Acre's Night Prowler. I don't remember. And Pass and Review. They were all Humble Acre dogs.
Yes.
And my Buccaneers Poppycock was one of my first pointers. Was my first pointer. And all of these were in the top 10 at the same time. None of them were from California. There was a Margetta dog. There was Shandown Sunburst of Troon, Kathy Parks.
Oh, I remember. Yes.
She was beautiful. And St. Alwyn's Traveler, who was related to St. Alwyn's Radiance, who was the first pointer you fell in love with.
Yes.
It was pretty cool to look back and see who was winning then. Of course, I wonder today how those dogs would fare. I think Traveler would be fine, and maybe some of the others as well. But the breeds changed. I got in a couple years before. I was working for the Forsyths, and they had two pointers in the kennel, Crooked-Eyes Greg and Crooked-Eyes Suki, liver and whites. And I'd been going to shows in my life, and I saw the pointers, and these are the first two that filled my eye. They were the make and shape I liked. They were the head and tail I liked. And I had to have one. So I telegrammed, and I have the telegram, over to Sicily, Robert Shaw Crooked-Eyes. We went back and forth and with letters after that. And then I have the final telegram where she sent Miles to us in New Jersey in 1977. At the same time, Ralph Del Deo, who was a great mentor to me in life and in dogs, he lived nearby, and we were all friends through English setters. The Howes had English setters. My dad and I had English setters, and Ralph thought we should have a pointer. So he gave a pointer bitch to Laurel Howe and myself. We combed her together. Her first dog show, she went best of winners to the National. That was Poppycock, and she wanted to be a top 10 pointer. And then, and Miles, of course, ended up winning the National in 1980. So we all got real lucky with our starts, didn't we?
I think
lucky souls. Really lucky.
Maybe timing is everything, because there really weren't many pointers being shown at that time. I know I would show up, mostly I was the only pointer at the show. Yeah. And like your Sandstorm, Amy loved to show.
Yeah, she did.
She had a wonderful time.
And we had good entries on the East Coast, and then California too, but at the time there weren't as many in the Midwest at all, and that's certainly changed.
No.
There were so many people back in that generation. And I always do a disclaimer when I do these on points. We are not going to mention everyone we intended to mention. We are going to leave out some great dogs and great breeders, because that's just the way our brain works. Over 40 years, 45 years, you're not going to remember them all until you hang up. And then you're going to go, oh. So I just want to try to give at least a few of them from that era, who are still, a lot of them still active. we had, of course, the Crooked Pointers who changed the world when they came over here. Kathy Parker,
Yes.
Bertha Troon, Marjorie Mortarello, of course, who got her start from Bob Parker with some great winning liver dogs back in the day and is still breeding. Humble Acres, who could forget Jean Ellis, we talked about it. Patty Lillisand and her mom were involved back then and still are. Henry Tuttle, he was really important in pointers and is today breeding.
They're
really
still
good.
doing lots of breeding.
Mac McLeod from Canada, he brought in those St. Albans dogs. Karen Ash, who was doing a lot of dual purpose work back then, and Bob Parker, who helped Marjorie get started. And I'm sure there's so many more, but it was really a camaraderie. We had a great group back then. And it ended up within very few years, in the late 70s, early 80s, we three all started breeding dogs, our dogs to one another, and coming up with some nice mixes. Paula, you were one of the adventurous ones. We're talking about an era where the dogs looked different.
Yes.
They were all liver and white, except for the occasional lemon, like Sandstorm. The Garden Best of Breed and the National Best of Breeds, for the first, 60 years, all liver and white or lemon and white. In 1979, I think it was 79 or 78, Henry Tuttle was the first one to win a national with an orange-white pointer, and I was a second in 1980 with Miles. So they were rare birds. And they really were. And Paul, you bred Amy to Miles, his name, by the way, is Rosanara Amontillado of Crooked. And you bred Amy to him and got a Best in Show winner, didn't you?
Yes. That was Clay. Sidmar, Arizona Clay.
Arizona Clay.
He was an orange and white, the nice black nose, black eyes.
As was Miles. So did you really have 3 Best in Show winners in a row? That's just sad. You did. Good pointer.
Actually, Amy never was Best in Show.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yes.
Won a lot of
group. Many group ones. And at the time when I was pregnant I was too pregnant to show her, she was sent to Corky Groom in California for about 8 months. And at the time he was showing Punky. So Amy was always second in line to Punky, which was fine. Punky
being a greyhound, the gorgeous greyhound.
The greyhound, yes, right, Talk of the Blues.
Yeah.
But no, actually Amy had lots of group ones. She never did go Best in Show. Headhunter was my first Best in Show dog, and then Clay followed.
Well, you had to pay your dues with groups with your first one.
Well, of course you do. Yes.
And then when I brought over Miles, I also brought over Crooked Eyes Maud, and Tom and I had become friends. I think we were 9 years old or something, and started breeding those dogs together as well. And Tom brought over a beautiful bitch named Crooked Eyes Crystal, and she was a daughter of Flint. Tom, did you know that? Do you remember that?
Yes, sure. But I didn't bring her over, Wayne. She went to Canada to Jody Aylward. And the first time I saw her was at some shows in Canada. And I said to Jody, who had Irish Wolfhounds, "What are you doing with this pointer?" She said, "Oh, I always wanted one." I said, "If you ever want to get rid of her, you let me know." Well, the next thing I know, I was a couple of years later, I was at Westchester, and Erica said to me, "Come see what I've got." And she opened the crate, and I said, "That's Crooked Eyes Crystal." She said, "How do you know that?" And I said, "Because I tried to buy her from Jody." She said, "Well, I did." One thing led to another. Crystal eventually came to live with me.
Yes, she did. Yeah. Now, wasn't she the Dame of Opal?
Opulence.
Yeah, Opulence. We called it Opal, right?
I remember her, super typey bitch.
Yeah, very refined. Elliot used to call her the portrait doll. She was very refined, but which allowed them to, breed to larger bone dog.
Yeah, and the thing with those dogs is that they're very tightly bred on Flint, Crooked Eyes Flint. Most all of them are. Crystal was a daughter. Miles was a grandson, and that crossed with the American dogs here that people were finally brave enough to do. Really gave us some nice combinations. Marjorie Mortarello bred Truan's Taste of Triumph, who was a beautiful bitch and a big winner, to Miles, and got 2 Best in Show winners out of that.
I'd forgotten that.
Yeah, Margetta Milestone, Margetta Vanessa. We bred this orange dog to her liver bitch, and we got all black and whites. That would be unusual today.
Yeah.
But back then, it was a topic of discussion.
Betcha.
Everyone was like, what are they, who really? So I ended up going to Rutgers, meeting a geneticist and working with him for 6 months, cleaning cages while he did the smart stuff. And I wrote that little book on color inheritance because color inheritance was a rare, we didn't know we're going over here. It was
Right.
rarefied air. And it helped us all work together to balance the colors. Tom, speaking of balancing colors, what do you think right now? How has that ended up? We went from all liver, who tended to look, quite frankly, a little hound deer, a little more bone, a little more flu, a little more ears, a little more tail. And then we brought in these typey orange and whites and black and whites and crossed them together. We had an explosion of 4 colors, but it didn't last long. Now
No.
it seems.
Well, it's interesting, Wayne. I live in upstate New York, where Mr. Whaley of the famous L.Hugh Field Trial kennels spent their summers here. And when I first knew Bob, everything he had was liver and white. I mean, those were the hunting dogs, and that's the way they came, and they bred liver to liver to liver to liver to liver, and that's what they got. He was probably was the most respected field trial breeder in the country, if not in the world. But anyway, short story. We'll get past that. No, I don't think we should tell it. When you and I went to England with Bob and Gatra, I was judging Windsor, and so we were not allowed to visit any kennels where there were possible entries under me. So we went to the field trial kennels, and we drove up to this lady's house, and I said, I'll go in and introduce her. And so the 4 of us walked towards her cottage, and the door opened, and the woman screamed, and she said, Bob Whaley, and brushed right past Wayne and Gatra and myself, was hugging him and carrying on. And so Gatra looked at us and said, well, we're chopped liver. So she had trained all of her dogs from his book and from his videos. And so he was the star, and correctly so. But it was funny. Anyway, getting back to his liver dogs, when he bred, he didn't pay much attention to pedigrees, but he didn't outcross very often either. But he really bred on performance, and he bred to I believe, a liver dog. Wayne, you're gonna have to tell me if this is possible. And that changed the whole colors of his dogs for the future. He had a lot of black and whites. He had a lot of oranges, and but he didn't. It turned out, I think I'm telling the story about the right dog. It turns out that the dog he bred to, I don't know what his name was, but he didn't look at pedigree. But two generations back, he was all L.Hugh breeding, so he was really didn't outcross. It went right back to his own stuff with a little bit of addition of somebody else. But the color thing is very interesting, and look at today. I think the world is desperate for a liver dog. I have such strong feelings about this that I think that liver, for me, liver in this breed is the basic. It's they're better mentally, they're better physically, they're just better all the way around. And you can't keep breeding orange to orange, black to orange, orange to black, and not put some liver in there once in a while to bring back kind of the mental and physical soundness that the breed needs. And that's my feeling.
That's what we all started with.
That's right. It is what we started with.
Yes.
Well, do you think we lose some scope too? I mean, I think orange to orange for a long time tends to narrow them up. Not as much bone, not as much depth, not as much spring rib. Where we all had plenty of rib going all the way back to the loin too, the short loin, back with the brown ones. And you started with livers. Wouldn't you love to see one now, a stud dog on the path that was usable for all these beautiful orange bitches that we have?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
that would be exciting, and I hope it happens soon.
Well, I don't know.
A couple of pictures of one that might happen, so it'd be good. It's fun to see.
Yeah, yeah. And I hope people will use the dog.
Yeah,
I mean, that's really
key.
important. it's the key. You have to have an open mind when you're a breeder, and you have to make the right selections.
Open mind is really the right thing to say, Paula. I will
Yeah.
tell this story on air today that when Michael Zola wanted to lease Opal and Opulence to breed to Deputy, I was opposed. I just wasn't smart.
I can understand that.
And so he kept after me. And finally, the last call came from Elliot Weiss, and Elliot said, "Tom, you have to do this. She's never going to go. You've gone as far as you can go with her, with all her elegance. She needs bone, she needs body, she needs substance, and she needs a little mental adjustment." So I said, "Okay," and that's how that happened.
And Deputy, by the way, Margetta
and
National Flame, who went Best in Show at Westminster, he really did look quite different than our dogs.
Yeah.
To make that breeding was such a bold move, and it really turned out. I mean, Bee's Knees, Elliot, I can't think of Elliot's name
And
right.
after I saw what Tom got with that breeding, that's when I took my import, Molly, Shordell Memento, a Pipeaway. I took her to Deputy.
Is that right?
I remember that.
Yes, and it was a wonderful litter. It was good, and it was all black, which was liver to orange, and the total liver was black, and that's where Sally Barton got her good stud dog.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yes, they were very sound and wonderful attitudes. The temperaments were great. They
And
were
speaking
great
of the
dogs.
answer we just left out, Sally Barton's been breeding good pointers for a long time, as have Patty
Yes.
and Thad Haynes. They've been breeding some good sound dogs for a long time.
Yes, they were.
My favorites. And also, well, we'll get up to speed more currently, but when I wrote an article about this recently, and Paul and I were just talking about it. It's on root breeds. Paul, we talk about this a lot, about pointers are so unique as a sporting breed because they really come from hound breeds. When you're looking at root breeds and retrievers and spaniels and setters, they're all in the same group. But pointers had a whole lot of hound, scent-hound and sight-hound in their backgrounds. What features from each of those do you think we should be conscious of when we're judging pointers or assessing pointers?
Well, I know when I mentor people, I think of what Annie Clark used to say, you have to be aware of the drags of a breed, and you really need to know the history. And so I tell people that we have problems with both sighthound and scenthound characteristics, with the longer ropey tails, the lack of stop of plain common heads, the longer ears, tubular bodies, too much skirting. I mean, they're all things, and for a while I was seeing a lot of super rounded bone and upright pasterns, which coming from the foxhound part. But it's something I think breeders need to be aware of too. You really have to be selective in what you keep in your breeding program because these things do pop up.
Yeah, and about sighthound characteristics, Tom, what of those should we be mindful of?
Well, I think, in sighthound, okay, I want to go back and talk about Paula's comment just a minute ago, but I'll come back to that. Sighthounds, I think, is the arch that you're going to get from there, and tail set, things like that are obviously sighthound characteristics, and maybe refined head. I never thought about that really, to be frank.
Maybe too much tuck up.
Right.
Yeah, all that goes with the arch and everything else. I have to tell you though, Wayne, Paula is my hero. A number of years ago,
Oh no.
Tom?
Paula, you're going to have to correct me if the
Okay.
sequence, but I've told this story for so many years, it may have become embellished a little bit. But a number of years ago, Elliot and I were in, I think, either Portland or Seattle. And what do you want to do? And I said, well, I don't know, let's go. Who's judging pointers? I said, oh, Paula, let's go watch. Into Paula's maybe, say, 12 to 18 class came a liver, orange, and white pointer. And we kind of were looking at this thing, and Elliot said, what would you do with that? And I said, I don't have any idea. I'd throw him out, I guess. Well, what's your basis? I said, I don't have any idea. So Paula gave it a blue ribbon. It was the only one in the class. And when it came to Winters, fortunately, she had other choices, and so she didn't have to use it. So after she was through, we went over. He said, "What'd you think, Paula?" She said, "Oh my God, I didn't know what to think. I've never seen one." And when I say liver and white and orange, it was bright beagle orange. I mean, there was no foxhound orange. It was brilliant colored, 3 color, white and 2 colors. So time goes on, and as the history kind of repeated itself, and I don't remember where we were, and but Elliot and I were there, and Paula was judging pointers. Let's go watch Paula judge pointers, and into this ring comes this tricolor pointer. They must have had a thing for her. But, anyway, so she walked over, had a discussion with the handler. The handler left the ring. She went to her book, and time went on, and I said. So we couldn't wait for her to finish, and said, "What the hell did you do? How did you figure that one out?" She said, "Well, I was not going to get caught twice. I went to the AKC and explained the whole situation to them and said, 'What do I put in my book?' And they told her, and she told us, excused, color not addressed in standard." Am I right about that, Paula? Is that what it said?
Close. You're close.
Close. Good enough.
I actually came up with it on my own.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And that's the first time that I had that puppy, and I did give it a blue ribbon, but no points available.
You had to, yeah.
I went home and I thought and did some research, and I felt, for me, it's too close of hound blood.
Absolutely.
And so the next time when this tricolor pointer walked in the ring, it was a special. It was in the special
it was.
class.
That's right.
And I thought, and I went through the judging, I judged it, and I felt, as a breeder, I'm not going to accept this in my ring. And I felt if I left it in the ring, I was accepting it. And that's why I excused it. Right or wrong, that's what I did.
I think 100% correct.
What I wrote in my book was, excused, color not provided for in standard. And that's what I wrote.
Perfect. Yeah. And no one ever objected, right?
Pardon me?
No one ever objected to that.
Oh, of course not.
Better not.
Well, thank
Well,
goodness
it was.
we didn't have social media then. It just would have blown up.
But I've judged a lot of pointers, and as you have through the years, and I've never seen one. I mean, never seen one in my ring. Put it that way. I think they came from Canada.
Yes.
They were allowed in Canada, I believe, and so the 2 that I saw, and I did see one other one in California, but it just was. I think you're right. We got to put a stop to this right here and right now. But there were major sporting dog judges who didn't agree with me or with you, this by perchance.
Well, I know, and like Wayne and I were talking one time, and Wayne said that the color is accepted in country of origin. So,
There was a top winning dog.
Personal opinion, yes.
Top winning dog in England, Loke Mahdi's Odd Man Out. And he did a lot of winning and no one objected. Was he a try? Yeah, great try.
Okay.
Devil's advocate version of that story would be long ears are a hound trait.
Yeah.
Skirting's a hound trait. Long tails, do we throw them out because those are hound traits?
True.
Yes. I have no horse in this race, but I like what you did. If they come up, they come up. What you don't want to do, of course, is make it something special that everybody wants.
That's right. For sure.
All right, enough of that. Anyway, I think we're all in agreement. This color thing is going to haunt us if we don't take care of it. In England, there's always been all 4 colors, always. And when we just shifted it this way, we went from all liver to all orange. And by the way, part of the problem was us, the 3 of us, introducing these orange and blacks. I
like the look. They're beautiful.
Of course.
They don't fade.
Right. They had the heads, they had the tails, and they look more like pointers. Now, another thing, going back to Bob Whaley, who was clearly a mentor and hero. I mean, this guy was probably the most renowned field trial breeder in the world. No, he was. And everyone respected him for that. And his book, Wing and Shot, is a classic still for training bird dogs. So Tom and I were up there. I mean, I was there at least once a month. Cheryl and I would drive all the way up, and we'd all play with all these pointers together, Tom and Bob and Gator and Cheryl and I. And just watching them was a lesson. Never did I see one that wasn't square or slightly off square.
Yeah.
And I looked at the national results last year, and sure enough, the national grand champion was a live and right pointer who was square. It does not mention, unfortunately, proportion in the pointer standard. So you can have them as long as you'd like, I guess. But when you look when you look at what performs in the field, it seems obvious that the breed is more of a square breed than it is a longer bodied breed. You make it 9 to 10.5 or 10 and 3, whatever you want to do. But that's beginning to become an issue, I think. Maybe it's always been there. What do you think, Tom?
Do you think they're longer back or longer loin?
Or shorter legged?
Or yeah.
Right? I think they're longer legged and shorter legged. That's what I see.
I think the longer loin would be more offensive to me, but I think it's I don't see it as a big problem. I mean, in talking about Bob's dogs, for instance, Wayne, you and I looked at them; they were all bow-legged.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Bow-legged. I mean, they were not slightly off; they were bow-legged.
Were they
were
more
born
barrel-chested as well?
Pardon me?
Were they more barrel-chested as well?
Yes.
Did the bow legs?
Yes, I'd say so. But I think my theory on this is more environmental than genetic. And if that's possible, and I guess it is, but these dogs ran in harness for all their lives. He would hook them up at the kennel in a team of 10 or 12, and they'd run 1.5 miles down to the lake. And he'd take they'd take the harness off, and they all go swimming, and he'd lay everything back out again, whistle them back up out of the lake. They'd get all hooked up, and they'd run 1.5 miles back to the thing. But that pulling, the way they did, he ran them in sled dog races against the Huskies and things in Vermont and New Hampshire. That leads to one story where he did pretty well, and Wayne knows the story. All of a sudden, they're charging along, and his dogs were in fabulous condition, and they loved doing this. I mean, they loved running in harness. And all of a sudden, he's coming around the corner somewhere in Nashua, New Hampshire. Boom, the dogs all went on point. Well, these smart competitors salted the whole trail with pheasants and quail. That came first, and that was the end of his sled dog career.
We're trying to get beat by the bird dogs every weekend. Yeah. Bob could do anything. He could do anything. He wanted a chicken for 2 or something. And
Please.
And horses, race horses, sculpture. He was brilliant. Anyway, let's move a little farther ahead in timing, and we get into the middle of things where things got good, and we had some really good ones. Michael Scott had a beautiful orange and white bitch that tore it up, and others did too. That was a real heyday, and I think we're almost back there with a couple of good kennels producing some really good dogs. When I met Susan Thompson, Katie and Dennis, Katie, I was really young, and I came down I moved to Florida or Georgia. I moved to both, but probably Georgia where I met her. And I had a son of Miles named Vaguely Noble, Onsage Vaguely Noble, who did real well. And she had a livery dog named Billy, a completely different looking dog. And Susan and I and then Steve Herman, another guy who's been great in pointers for 1,000,000 years.
Sure.
He was there, and he'd come up to the ring with this liver dog. Maybe his name was Billy. And Steve and I would look and go, the judge, if he's got a bolo tie and a flat top, Steve's winning. It was someone better dressed, I was winning. It was a matter of style and function. And mine wasn't as sound as his, and his wasn't as pretty as mine. I wouldn't say any was better than the other. It just was a different culture in dogs. And since then, Susan, it was a brilliant breeder. And she went and got a Crookrise dog somehow from a woman, I don't know, it was Canada or wherever, and crossed that dog into her program and started to change things up a lot. And then she got a stud dog back from me, who was my on-stage devil is due, who was a son of Miles as well. No, he was sort of one of Susan's dogs. That's why she got one back out of one of my bitches. And that was on-stage Marquetry at Solivia, who ended up being a really top sire for her, and in South America and everywhere else. So she really did the same thing we did. I mean, she took these sound liver-based dogs and smartly crossed in these English dogs to get type. And as she passed that whole long lifespan of breeding on to Dennis and Katie, and Claire and Haley, the other daughters as well, they were the benefactors getting that great work from her mom, and they've done a smashing job with it, as have others. And we're getting some nice dogs now from all. Now we look back at those first crosses in the late 70s. We're seeing it today. But for me, again, we need some brown ones.
Well, you said she got dogs from Canada. I thought the dog she got was from Australia, but the Crookrise Orion dog.
Orion. Did he come from Australia? But I don't think he came straight to Susan from Australia. There was somebody.
Well, I don't know. Maybe not. He was Tango's son.
Yeah.
And when Mr. Whaley bought Tango, she had to stay there for a litter. And Orion was in that litter. I thought he went to Australia and then came to here. And I don't think he went directly to Paula or to Susan. I think he went somewhere else first. But that was a wonderful cross for her.
Yes. And Orion never stopped wagging his tail.
No, that's right.
He sired Jack, whose formal name escapes me, but he was a great sire too. I bred to him. I bred Derby to him, Rosanora Impudence. And we got some, on that one litter, when we bred Derby to Jack, Derby had one litter of puppies in that whole year, and she was top sporting dam. They all finished and did well.
It was a beautiful litter. I remember that litter.
That's right.
Beautiful.
They were. And Ed Biven brought a pointer back from Australia. That's why I think that's where I know where the dog was. And he called me up, but he had asked me to make him a pointer, and I said I will someday. And he called me up and he said, I hate to tell you this, but I'm not going to need a pointer. I found one. I said, you found one? Where'd you find it? I found it in Australia. And really? He said, what's her breeding? And he said she's sired by a dog called Crookrise Orion. I hope that doesn't upset you. And I said, Orion's mother's on my couch. It doesn't upset me at all.
But Susan was sharp.
And talking about Australia, look at all the good dogs that have come out of New Zealand.
Sure.
There's some very good.
And that could have been, he could have been in New Zealand.
They made their way here.
Yeah. I have a strange, interesting meeting story. Cheryl and I, when I'm all in, I'm all in. I get pointers. I'm going to plan my wedding so I can go to the 75th anniversary of Pointer Club in England. And that's exactly what we did. And we got there and we went to visit Cicely because we'd already had dogs from her. And Cicely Robertshoff, Crookrise Kennels. And the village of Sedberg is so wonderful and tiny. And I'd seen all these gorgeous pictures of these dogs that had from Australia, New Zealand, all over the place that she had been involved with. And especially this wonderful gentleman who had dogs with her in Australia. And I'm walking, I've never been starstruck in my life. I've worked with some really famous people, doesn't faze me in the least. I'm walking down the street and I see in this little cottage, David Wong sitting in a beautiful lounge chair. And I thought, the first time in my life, I'm sort of starstruck. I know this guy. He had these great pointers from Sicily. And he had one of the best that ever lived in my opinion. And he was a liver dog named Crookrise Firebrand. He was
beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful. And I'm still in touch with David. He's spectacular.
I saw him in Canada a couple of years ago. He was judging, the Canadian Pointer National, and I was up there for that weekend, and it was so fun. Such a great guy. Knowledgeable.
Oh, so knowledgeable. When he came to visit us in New Jersey, we took him to a show in New York, and he was a very excitable guy, right? Very passionate. And we're watching pointers, and none of the ones that we had were there. I just took him up to watch, and it was a sea of liver and white with skirts and jowls and ears. And
Oh my.
And he was infuriated. I have to go talk to the judge. I'm like, David, you can't do that. I'm going in the ring right now. No, you cannot do that. He was so passionate about wanting to talk to the judge, and maybe he should have. At the end of the day, he had that knowledge. What a great man! I just adore David, and I still am thrilled that he's around, that we can talk to for some great history lessons on those pointers. And then also recently from Australia, Tabitha Bennis and Mark Bettis. And she's bred some great dogs down there and brought one here. Now they're done showing them, so we can talk about them. Who I thought was one of the best male pointers I've ever seen. You've seen him,
Totally. Yeah. For the first time I saw him in the classes in Louisville, and I gave him the breed and a group 2 that day, and he's just a wonderful dog.
He's the right shape, the right head, the right tail.
The temper there, just so sound and a beautiful mover.
Yes, he was.
He put everything together.
And again, he's a dog that could have won in England in the 70s and 80s, but he couldn't have won in America in the 70s and 80s. He probably would have looked alien.
He would be odd man out, as they say,
he would be odd man out.
At the time.
There were a lot of good bitches in pointers over the years, but not as many great males. And so he would be in that list for America. And Firebrand and some of the English dogs I'll never forget as well. Tom, do you remember one of our trips to England, we went and saw a bitch named Bizan Tango of Crookrise. No. Yeah. True.
No, that's
Bizan,
right.
True.
Not Tango. That's right.
Tango was yours. True. And I'm going to forget the woman's name. She was delightful. And we went to her country. Fran Barr.
Yes, Fran Barr. Correct.
And to me, that bitch, she's clearly in my top 10. I just loved everything about her. She was an orange and white with enough bone and body appropriate for a female. She just was exuding athleticism, and her head and tail and her character. I remember once, and I forget who told me this. It might have been Jack Remender or Bob Parker, one of them back in the day, who said to me, I want to see a pointer that looks like it's about to jump out of its skin and take off in the field. And that really encapsulated character for me as a youngster.
That goes with our standard that says compact power and agile grace, which is not that easy to get.
No. The other thing in the standard that's very clear is tail lashing from side to side.
Yes.
That's a breed feature. That is a classic feature that defines the breed for me, and you just don't see enough of it.
No, not today. I think it's really gotten to be a problem. I'm seeing tails that are just stiff, and instead of lashing side to side, I see them going up and down.
Up and down. That's right.
Up and down. Unfortunately, I mean that's something we've rather lost.
Yeah.
You just don't see it as often, and it is the icing on the cake.
And it's not just that it lashes side to side for character. It helps them move.
Yeah.
It gives them athletic locomotion as well. It's so important. Let's talk about heads for a minute. The standard this is the only standard that I know of, provides for 2 different heads. It provides for parallel planes, equally acceptable to slight impression of a dish, right? And today it seems that if you don't have a dish, you're not considered a great head. And we've seen some real good ones with parallel planes, to the point now where some of these dishes are getting so exaggerated that they would, if they're out hunting and they were on point with that nose turned up and that dish so exaggerated and that muzzle so short, they drowned in the rain. It becomes an issue. So again, the balance between those 2 types of heads, it's always a matter of finding the middle, isn't it, Tom?
I think it is. It's one of those things that Sandstorm certainly did not have the ditch, and he was. I referred to him as plain-headed, and I hated the definition, the American standard, and the English. Oh, this is an English. It's the same way I feel about Labradors. I mean, these are not English Labradors; they're American Labradors. They're Labradors, and so somewhere in the middle, they've got to find the right thing. And I think that maybe so. Maybe they are becoming a little extreme today, but everything comes in extremes, and that will edge out. I just want to go back a little bit, talking about Fran Barr. When Cecily showed tango to me at Windsor, and when she came in the ring, Wayne, I think it's the first time I've ever really noticed this characteristic. But she tossed her head up, and her nostrils got as big as a nickel, if not. And she was sending the air, and she had this look about her, and I thought, stop my heart. I mean, she was going to win the CC if she could walk around the ring. She was going to be the easy winner. But it was such a classic time and such a classic pointer thing that you don't see it a lot. But boy, she was really using where she was, and she was kind of a farm girl. You know, she hadn't been to the big city very often, and I think maybe that's why. I'm talking about tango, not Fran Barr.
Yeah. It was a glorious day. The weather was perfect. The castles in the background, and then seeing her presence in that ring that day was spectacular. And Winsmore Rio Gold was in there too, who you also won, gave a CC to, in the dog side. I have the catalog marked from that day. And your first 4 placements in those 2 classes are all dogs we've heard of and bred to and are in our pedigrees. That was a golden era in England.
Yeah.
It really was.
It was fun.
What about heads for you, Paula? What do you think we need to see? What do you think we're seeing too much of?
You know, I think sometimes people make a little too much of the dish. Mm-hmm. And I feel some of the most beautiful heads I've seen are parallel planes, but what makes the difference to me is the depth of the stop.
Absolutely.
If you get the good deep stop,
yep,
you have room to have the larger round eye that we call for, which gives you the soft expression that our pointer needs. To me, it's the stop is very, very important.
So wouldn't you say that, I think we were in agreement on this one, when in our minds anyway, right or wrong, when we're thinking of a dish, we're not at all thinking of a turned up nose. We're thinking of the work at the stop that gives the impression of the dish.
And all that delicate chiseling.
Yeah.
I think that is so important to give you the soft mouth. As in the Dobermans, you want lots of muscling and fullness in the muzzle because you want the strength of the muscle for biting. Pointers, we want a soft mouth. Yeah. Hence the chiseling, and gives you the nasal passages.
And what about ears?
It's all important. It's all important. And it's little
what about
ears.
Ears too. And what about ears and pointer heads?
Oh, you know, I think they're better, so much better than they were.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think we've done a good job. They're set on high. They're the right shape. They're nice, thin leather. You can see the veining in them. I don't think ears are a big problem right now at all.
I don't either, and I think they're pointed. They're not too long. Mm-hmm. I have the visualization of the standards book, the old George Foley book, and Shandown Celebration or Cracker Jack, Silveridge Cracker Jack is in the photograph. And back in those days, they took the standard and they spread it around with little arrows pointing to every part of the dog. And there's an arrow saying reaching just below the lower jaw, and of course Cracker Jacks were down around his elbow. Maybe because liver to liver for so many years gave us the scent hound characteristics that lengthen those ears. And now that we're going orange to orange for so long, the good news is we're getting some nice short ears with thin leather where you can see the veining. It's beautiful when you can see that. It's a finer point, but it's one I enjoy. Tom, didn't we go through this with Bob Whaley about thickness of ear leather? And I think maybe one of us was.
Yeah, I think we had the discussion. I don't think he really thought that was of importance. His heads were plain. They were a little thick. The ears were a little thicker than. But so,
the liver was thicker than the black in the middle, and then the orange and the.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, pretty cool. And lemons, of course, and that's another thing to be clear on for people who aren't real involved in the breed for a long time. We had to make this delineation in America when we started getting these dogs with black noses. We have agreed to call oranges dogs that have a black nose and black eye, black pigment, no matter if they're a faded pale yellow or not. They're an orange if they have black pigment because they can produce black puppies. Lemon and whites which can have a deep, deep orange, but a self-colored nose and eye rings, they can never, eye rims, they can never produce black and
Correct.
white red to one or an orange one. So it's a matter of genetics as well as just coming up with a common term. So,
Well, Sandstorm was registered as orange and white, but he was certainly a lemon.
well, I can tell you that when I started doing the research at the AKC library to figure out this stuff for that little booklet thing, all the records were people picked out whatever they wanted.
But nobody thought about it. It wasn't of importance.
We just had to agree on it so we could tell our pedigrees.
And Marjorie I think Marjorie had a lemon, an orange bitch that was very, very pale.
Yes.
And it was beautiful.
Her one.
Beautiful. But a black nose, and she was a classic. She was lovely.
Very, very pastel. And they're very pretty. It's a beautiful look.
Yes, they are. All right. Heads, tails, bodies. I mean, tails, not only the shape, but that lashing size, the right shaped bone, not hound bone, not blade bone, not like a sighthound bone. The body shape and make. We don't want an Irish setter. We want a pointer. And, well, we want a field trial Irish setter, maybe, but
yeah.
And then marking shouldn't have anything to do with it.
No.
The Thompsons have bred some glorious, as have others, solid color pointers. And I remember standing at ringside in Houston, and you might have been judging, Paula, and a field rep came to me, and you just gave a solid liver best of winners, who clearly was the winner, and she couldn't even won the breed. She was young. And the rep said to me, "How could you do that? Dog should be excused from the ring." And I thought, wow.
Oh my.
Liver, solid occurs. You need a liver, you need a solid to do it. But it occurs, and it occurs beautifully. The Danish dogs that people bringing over in the 40s and 50s for field trial work were solids, solid black, solid orange, and solid livers. And so don't discount those. If you get them in the ring, if you're thinking about breeding one, don't.
I wonder if that was the beautiful solid liver bitch that I also gave an award of merit to at the garden.
Yes, it was, I think.
That was
lovely.
And that was one of Susan Thompson's, I believe.
Yeah, it was. Susan Thompson.
Yeah, beautiful bitch.
Oh, gorgeous. I think it was something like the Snowball made it or something like that.
It was a snowball.
Yeah, something Snowball. But she
I
was.
don't remember the whole name.
Yeah, and I wonder how many solids have never caught on because of their color. It's too bad. Someday they'll be a great one. All right, anything else you want to say, Paula, about this breed in general, what it means to you, what you think the future should be, what breeders should keep an eye on?
I think, like you said, right now, I think we're in a good place. I think there's several kennels out there. They're putting out good dogs. And what is really great is that the people are getting to see what a good pointer should look like. And I think that's wonderful. And I think people just need to keep being mindful of those traits that pop up that are the drag of the breed, because I think they're always going to be there. And like you said, we do need a really smashing liver and white out there for breeding, and hopefully people will use it.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it happening.
And you know, it needs to be a great one. It needs to be a good one. That's it.
Yes, good one.
Tom, what about you? Final thoughts on the breed?
Well, I think Paula's got it absolutely right. I think that there are so many good ones today, and that gives you a lot of pride. And if you look back in some of those pedigrees, you think, "Oh, I had something to do with that." And I think it's so important for people to see what is correct and what is not. And now you're getting choices of 5 corrects, and you're really getting picky and finding little things that you like. So judges education is so important. Having the right people give judges education is vitally important. But I think the exposure is what we need, and I think we're going to get better judges on the breed and in the breed by continuing to show these good dogs that are so correct.
I think you're right. I mean, I think the only way you can learn about a breed is seeing good ones, and the judges have an opportunity to do that now. And I hope it continues. Yes. For the record, before we close, I just want to say, Mr. Bradley has a Bull Terrier in his house. Paula has a Russell Terrier in her house. I have a Wolfhound in my house. So maybe we all need to go back out and get a pointer. It's been a while.
There we go.
Thank you very much, all. It's been terrific. And you know, it's just so nice to talk to dear old friends, not old, dear long-term
Thank you.
friends
Yes.
about a breed that we are all passionate about. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Please, if you have any questions, you can email me at WayneCavanaugh1@gmail.com. Mr. Bradley and Miss Nykiel, you can look up in the judge's directory if you want to send it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that online, right? Anyway, we love having you both together, and thanks so much again. And from me, it's On Point on Canine Chronicle TV. We look forward to doing more of these on every breed there is.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Paul. It was great being with you all.
Oh, thank you too. It was wonderful. I really enjoyed it.
It
Take
was
care.
fun.
Take
You
care.
too.